All right. We are back. This is Solo Sessions, fresh off of a podium and a race this weekend in Louisville. Not to be confused with the Louisville that is just south of me in Colorado. I'm not really sure who Louis and Louis are and how they decided to pronounce their names, but, they maybe got some beef back and forth. But anyways, I'm going to do this episode a little bit maybe differently than I would a normal race recap where it's just a blow by blow of what exactly happened. You're going to find out what happened in the race. And over the weekend, I'm not sure how much race footage there actually is out there. So if you're listening on YouTube, I'm going to try and overlay any clips that I can find, maybe some pictures, try and paint the picture maybe a little bit more clearly visually for anybody tuning in with video. But if you're listening on any sort of podcasting site, you're not going to really miss out. But I wanted to go through this and kind of talk about my strategy and my mindset going into this race. If you listen to the Race Week podcast, the one before this one, episode 4, I went through a little bit of just the lead in to the race and how I approach a race week in general, but I didn't really go into strategy because even though sometimes my strategy isn't the most, even though my strategy is fairly well known, I didn't want to give away any tiny secrets to maybe a few of the guys if they happen to listen in and were scraping the internet for any edge they could get. So I want to go through exactly what my plan was, how it executed, maybe throw in some interesting things in and around the race, but really just try and add a little bit more detail because this is going to be a little longer than like a traditional race recap video that me and a videographer would put together. And I didn't really grab that much behind the scenes footage for this race. So we're going to test something out here by going through it on the podcast and really just breaking down kind of everything from the race in and around it. So I would say we'll just kind of, I guess, start off with what my strategy was when I was coming into this. And if you listen to any of these other podcasts, these few 70.3s I'm doing, they're all about execution. I want to go in with a plan, commit to the plan, and stick to it without fear, understanding the risk, and see how well I could deliver. And in these sorts of races, I always back myself for the win, but especially I'd say in kind of the smaller 70.3s in the US, it wasn't the most competitive field overall. It wasn't world championship level, but it still had some really solid guys. And I don't base my strategy necessarily on who's on the start list. However, we can't deny the fact that there's dynamics that come into play when you're creating a race strategy with who's on the start list and what the course looks like. So the very first thing I'll do, because the information is out there earliest, is the course preview. What does the course look like? What are the course maps? What is the setting that you're going to be in? What's the weather like? In Louisville, I always knew it could be hot, but it could also maybe just be warm. It ended up being a super hot day, and that was kind of the repeated narrative that everybody was telling. And I'm no stranger to hot races. I've had some good ones, and I've had some ones where I've really struggled in the heat. And I wanted to commit to just kind of giving the middle finger to the heat and not caring about it at all. That's not to say I didn't respect it, but really being unconditional about the conditions. And my strategy definitely reflected that. Initially, when the start list came out, we had some good swim bikers. We had Sam Appleton, Justin Rielli, you had Greg Harper, all guys who could swim with me, if not drive the pace. That was a really good thing for me because you have some allies on the bike. You can push the pace from the front and make guys like maybe Jason West and Trevor Foley and some of these other guys cutting their teeth at a different 70.3 that's not a pro series who are trying to make a name for themselves, really make them suffer early. And once a couple of those guys dropped off the list, like Appo and Rielli, Greg Harper, it all kind of fell on me. And my main thing was I'm going to isolate every single person in the race and make them have to work as hard as possible to keep up with me. So it was really blitzing the swim right from the beginning, not caring that the water that was predicted was usually around 80-ish, which is a pretty good level to swim in. It's about Kona temperature, and nobody particularly overheats in that swim, it takes a higher temperature to really start to overheat. Well, when we showed up, it was 87, even probably close to 88 degrees for this river because it was super hot leading into the race. And it looked like there's a lot of evaporation that was going on. The water level was low, and it was a river that ended up not having a super high flow rate. So when people were reviewing this race, they thought this is going to be a really fast swim because the current's going to push and nobody's going to separate themselves. And I just thought that that was not really true. First off, if you have fast swimmers, you can always break away and maybe the gaps might be a little lower, but there's still going to be some separation in the swim. And now second, I was going to lean on my swim ability to make sure that guys got uncomfortable as early as possible. And in particular, I thought my two biggest rivals for the race would be Jason West and Trevor Foley. We'll kind of leave off some of those other guys now because they dropped off. And then there were a bunch of people I didn't have much experience racing. And I know a few guys who are trying to come back into it. But based on how those guys' years have been going and just their traditional race results, I knew they were going to be tough competitors, and they're two of the best runners in the sport, in particular at the 70.3 distance. I knew Jason potentially could swim with me, and Trevor would have a gap, but he's a super strong cyclist, and so trying to maximize that gap out of the water to him would benefit me because he would have to work hard on the bike. And if you're taking in the heat into consideration, they're starting to think, okay, if I push too hard, then how am I going to manage this heat, catch Ben? And also in the back of their minds, you know, they had raced Lake Placid 4 weeks before, and they have in 4 weeks Nice. So I don't have a world championship coming up that's super soon. I didn't qualify for Nice, and I wanted to use that to my ability as well. I wouldn't say I fully did a full-on taper for this, but definitely rested and considered I would maybe be a little bit more fresh than these guys coming into this and have a little bit more high end, not focusing on the Ironman distance at this moment. So pushing right from the gun and creating that separation is some of the best thing you can do when you're a swimmer there. I call it breaking the hip. And I'm lining up. I'm pretty good buddies. I stayed with Jason and our sponsor, Good Life. Eric Wynn was there from Slowtwitch, and we all kind of shared a house. So Jason and I spent a lot of the weekend together. So you keep your friends close and your enemies closer, right? It's more of a joke because I get along with Jason pretty well. He's a good guy, a great racer, and like I said before, a great runner. And his also strength is he's very good at staying close to the race, staying close to you, and sticking to you to let his run then show and break away. I just did not want to get off the bike with these guys. So my first goal, separate myself from Jason. I saw him and could see his cap and goggles starting way off to the right. And where we're at is this little bit of a narrow harbor, I would say. So it wasn't particularly deep, but it was really warm. Hopping in, I could tell I barely did a swim warm up because I could just tell I just need to activate a little bit because there's no point in warming up. I'm going to be hot in about 2 minutes once the gun goes off. So I saw him go off to the right-hand side, and I was like, I'm going to start way to the left. That's one of my favorite spots to start because I can look to the right and I can see where everybody is at right from the beginning. And if I can create some separation, we're already golden because I'm making him work hard in the water and try and bridge the gap to me, which again, the heat, reoccurring theme, everybody's got it in the back of their mind. Once you cross over the threshold for shedding heat, you just keep getting hotter, and it's really hard to cool yourself down to be able to just get back to performing well. So I have been in good swim shape. I started off super quick. I always feel like in warm water, it makes you lazy. I've been swimming a lot in warm water at the YMCA here with Julie Dibbins' crew, so I feel like I'm pretty experienced in it at this point and knew if I could create separation early and then settle in, it would take a pretty big effort for anybody to bridge up. Now, there was one other guy who was a really good swimmer. He came out second of the water, and he started over by Jason, and I could see both of them fairly in line with me through the first 50 to 100 meters, and I just kept on the gas because, again, my mindset, commit, and don't worry about later in the race. Right now, you got to stay in the moment, execute your plan, and create this separation. So as I'm going, I realize there's some small gaps opening up. So I kind of had this strategy of, okay, they got to my feet at one point, so I'm going to surge again, and a gap would open. And then I could settle, almost let myself cool down a little bit, and then surge again. And I kept doing this a little bit, and it seemed to work for me, this kind of surging, then settling. And I find it sometimes difficult in the water when you're leading. You fall into a rhythm, and sometimes that rhythm is just on the wrong side of being too easy and comfortable. And I really wanted to keep pressing that. So every time I surge, it kind of brought me back into that race pace of, I'm going to get these guys and make them pay. So I had that gap. I could tell I was looking behind me the whole time. I wasn't doing any backstroke, but I was very aware of where these guys were. And I was just assuming that Jason was the one right behind me. I knew he was in a red suit, and with it being a swim skin race, the shoulders you could kind of see, but I'm looking behind myself. It was a little tricky, I guess, to figure out exactly who it was, but I didn't want to make any assumptions of, okay, it's not Jason, I'm good, I'm just going to settle, because I also knew, hey, I've got this gap, and if these guys are struggling to hold on to me, I can also put more time into Trevor. And I kind of guesstimated, Jason's going to come out with me, or maybe like 10 to 30 seconds back if I get some separation. Trevor's going to be in that maybe minute and a half to 3.5, 4 minutes if I'm really swimming well. And that pretty much, the swim I feel like always takes a while, but I could just see I'm settling in. I've got these gaps. Now let's kind of just get to the finish when I was coming around the last buoy. It definitely was warm. For whatever reason, I usually lose my cap. I got a funny shaped head or something, and my caps always seem to fall off in the races. This time it didn't, which was kind of unfortunate. You always really kind of like to lose that cap in the hot water because it lets you feel a little bit cooler. Anyways, that was fine. I turned the last one. It was a straight line swim. So a lot of ways that you can drop guys when you surge is to go around the buoy and put in an effort as they're turning the buoy to get a little bit of a gap. That's how I've dropped people in the past. That's how Greg Harper dropped me in Eagleman. And this time I had to get a little creative and try and swim almost into the buoy, then go around. And I was doing some funny little things, I guess, at the beginning, swimming a little bit serpentine to really lose the feet, have guys not know. I could see them if they were coming from the right over to the left. I cut super hard to the right so that they were still going left and they missed my feet. Because once you get in those bubbles of the kick, it's almost game over. It's really hard to drop somebody. So I made it as hard as possible to get on my feet. Now, coming out of the water, I should just pull up the results here as I'm talking, just to give this guy some credit, because he did bridge the gap. That was about 5 to 10 seconds coming out of the water. And I was a little bit not concerned, but I was like, oh man, this is going to be Jason right on my feet. But I was happy to see I did have about a 15 to, it ended up being 6 seconds out of the water to Jason. And this guy, his name is Matthew Gunter. He swam super well, was able to keep the gap close, and overall the flow wasn't super fast. We swam a decent time, like 21:33 was my time coming out of the water, and I felt pretty good. I did know this race, it was one of those where the transition just totally added up a ton of time, because from the exits of the water to where your bikes were after weaving through transition, probably about a half-mile run. It just seemed to take a while, and I was like, great, I got this 5-10 second gap on Jason, and now he's got half a mile to sprint and chase me as a carrot to go all the way up. Thankfully, I transitioned pretty well. I used a bit of a trick for ice, where put some ice in some pantyhose and put it down my back, which we cleared with the officials beforehand that ice down the back was okay. Apparently, ice down the front, because nothing can go down the front, is still considered a fairing, which is hilarious to me because ice melts. It's not going to stay there the whole time like a water bottle or anything else, and it's just for cooling purposes. But rules are rules. Didn't want to really put anything down the front. They said if it went down far enough, it could be okay. But I just put it on the back, and that was perfect. And got out of transition okay. But those two guys definitely came out right with me. And then from behind, everybody else seemed to be a minute behind, with Trevor Foley being 2:39 back. So pretty much right about where I expected everybody to be. Now, did I know those exact gaps going out on the bike? No. My only goal was to start hammering as soon as possible, not really doing a sprint, because I feel like when you go out super hard at the beginning of the bike, 400 plus watts, guys will hold that and then wait for you to settle. And usually you can settle in, especially when it's hot. You just don't quite get the gap. And I wanted to push the first half of the bike as hard as possible. And first off, botched the shoes going on totally. Just struggled to get my feet into the shoes. Jason and Matt just were able to get ahead of me a little bit. But once I was in the shoes, didn't bother tightening them down right away. Got going on the bike and took a little bit of time to try and tighten the shoes, push some good watts, just stress people out right from the beginning. And my only goal starting the bike was to drop Jason. And to do this, my plan was I'm going to go as hard as I can through 28 miles, reasonably so, maybe not all out, but ride hard and maybe above my 70.3 watts a bit, and just make Jason really question if he could go with me, and is Ben going to sustain this for the whole time. I looked back after pushing, a pretty good amount. I'm going to pull up all of my numbers for all the number geeks here, some of the peak powers and that sort of thing, where, my peak 20, 30 second watts were around 400, and 10-minute watt was 343, 20 minutes was 342, and 30 minutes was 338. 60 minutes, 327. So it wasn't outrageous. It's not like I'm pushing these crazy high numbers like a Magnus or Rico or anything like that. But we were going really pretty quick. And I noticed that the pavement was good in the course preview that I did. And it was a slight uphill all the way to mile 28. So I'm finally getting around to the point why I decided the halfway point was really the turning point of the race, because on the course profile, you could see it slowly rolled all the way up to that far side of the course before it slowly rolled back down, because it was a lollipop all the way out at the end, and you came the same way back. And that was all in my benefit, I think. And I felt like pushing the swim and the first half of the bike would limit some of that overheating, because it's earlier in the day. It's not the heat of the day just yet. And you put out some of that power to really separate yourself. And so for the first 5 or 10 minutes, I'm looking back a little. I see Jason. We had a little bit of a scuffle with the lead truck. I was hauling, we're going 30 miles an hour. And I kind of made a mental note of that, saying, okay, 30 miles an hour on this pavement is sustainable for the watts I'm pushing. Keep it above there. If you're above, you can kind of back off a little bit, but it's going to be really hard to catch me if I'm trying to average 30 miles an hour, especially for these first 10 miles until we hit the rollers. But then we hit about 10-ish miles right before the climb, and I look back and Jason is nowhere to be seen. And I just do a mini fist pump in my head going, this is exactly what I wanted. Nobody's around me. I think when I was looking back and kind of taking some mental notes of landmarks that I would go by, like at the bottom of a hill to the top of the hill, I could tell, okay, I could look back and see about a minute, maybe a minute and a half tops behind me. So I knew I had at least a minute and a half throughout this ride, because every time I would look back, there would be nobody there, no motorcycles behind me, and just no indication that anybody was riding up to me, which is great. That was exactly what I wanted. And so I stuck to my plan. Now for some of the funny stuff along on that first half of the ride, or some curious things. So this was an open course, which is just the nature of the beast in a 70.3, in just any triathlon. I mean, Nice has an open course as well, because you just can't shut down major roads the whole time for, I would say we're a minor event at this point. We're not something that is going to, like the Kentucky Derby that comes through here. We can't shut down the entire town. So I totally understand that. I just would love to have a little bit better way to have cars be aware of cyclists on the road. And thankfully, like, I had a lead vehicle that did a pretty good job at staying 300 meters ahead of me, or pretty far ahead after that first little lapse of paying attention where I came up and I had to slow down because he wasn't going fast enough. Managed to stay really pretty far ahead of me through the whole time and give these other cars that maybe come up to intersections to look a warning, and then they look left and thankfully see me. But I also had an official riding behind me the entire way, which is totally curious to me. I have no idea why they did that, because I was alone. So there's no reason. It was a little bit weird. It's almost like I felt like they were waiting for me to drop a bottle or make a mistake. So I'm not really sure why. I'm thankful for it, because in some cases they helped warn cars, I think, because they had lights on, and I just think a cyclist sometimes blends into the road. So overall, relatively uneventful through those first 25 miles or so. Hit the aid stations pretty well. My nutrition for this race, I was testing out ultra concentrating a bottle and putting pretty much all my carbs in one bottle, which would be 200 grams. And I have a little bit of backup for if I wanted to hit that 125 grams an hour. And my theory behind it was I could take these mouthfuls of carbs and really take it like a gel, where I'm getting in maybe 10, 15, 20 grams through a few big sips, and then washing it down with a lot of water consistently, and just picking up water at the aid stations, going through as many, I guess, liters of water as I possibly could. That backfired a little bit. One, it's kind of hard to drink some thick stuff, and I decided to do it through my BTA bottle, which made sucking it out of a straw just a little bit more challenging. But then two, with the effort and the heat, once I got farther into the ride, I think it started to not settle as well, because it wasn't as diluted. So you're putting a lot of carbs in your stomach all at once. And in the heat, I think in the past I've had some nutritional things that I'm trying to figure out. So this was me trying to fix those. And in practice in the heat in Colorado, I think it all worked fairly well. But once I did it in a race, I just think those conditions change a little bit, and my theory was wrong. And I got it really wrong, and you'll find out on the run how wrong it really was. But through the bike, I think I managed it pretty well and got down pretty much all of the 200 grams by the end of the ride. That was surprising to me. I didn't feel like I had that much, but I could kind of tell my stomach was accepting, or at least had that much. There was one time where maybe I felt a little queasy with it, but I just was like, hey, I'll drink water for a long time, give myself a 20, 25 minute break, and then get back into it. And that worked fairly well. Now, one of the interesting things, and this is my own fault, one of the aid stations was right on a corner that you take at halfway, pretty much as you hit that high point of the course. And as I was fiddling around with a water bottle, I didn't see the lead car take a left. And I knew there was a left there, but I kept going straight. And the barriers were a bit farther up the road. But thankfully, as I'm turning, I realize there's no car ahead of me, or as I'm going through it and fiddling with the water bottle, kind of look to the left, see the lead car on another road, look behind me, point to the official, like, are we going this way? And he confirms, like, yes, go that way. So I make it go. Barely anything lost there, but kind of goes along a theme of my mind was focused on the task, but had a few blips in there and things that I need to really keep in check when I'm racing, because there's no reason to be going off course. There really isn't. It's well marked. It was a very simple course. Literally, they said in the race period, it's like 6 turns. So that was just kind of silly, but also kind of funny. Put my head down, kept riding. Now, in the second half, I had no idea really where anybody was. There's nobody really on course. I tried to yell at a few people, like, what are the gaps? But I'm riding blind and just trying to go through my process. And it was a good kind of practice of focusing on your own race, because you can't help what the guys behind you are doing. In Eagleman, it took Trevor and his group basically the entire ride to catch me in the last few miles. So I tried to keep an eye out. And in the past, I hammered in Michigan last year where I was second. Jackson caught Justin Rielli and I about halfway through the bike or so, and we could see him from behind. I was just keeping an eye out, wanted to be aware if anybody was coming up, but I wasn't going to let up unless I kind of saw that. Then maybe your plan changes a little bit as you go through. And pretty much smooth sailing. So the second part of the strategy is when you're going fast on downhills, you can kind of let up almost because you're going fast, and to really overcome that air resistance as you're going through the air, you have to push exponentially more power than if you're climbing. So the difference in speed to create that difference in speed for if you're catching or trying to gap people, it just takes so much more effort when you're moving really fast versus when you're moving a lot slower. So I tried to give myself some recovery on the downhills and not soft pedal, but pedal a lot softer and go down towards Ironman pace or even zone 2, and then carry that speed as high up and over the hills as I could and kind of ride this as this accelerating roller coaster. So I'm pretty proud of the fact that I feel like I got the racecraft really right. And I feel like my strategy was really good on that bike to ride as fast as possible, because while I did push some decent watts for that first hour or so, I mean, my 90-minute power was 319, and overall I think my average power was like 310, even with like coasting in, and I haven't chopped the file completely yet, but I was in the mid-teens for the average, which is not a crazy power for a 70.3, but by the end, I was only 35 seconds off of Trevor's bike time, which is really good. And this is the first ride in a long time where I did not get caught. I rode the whole thing solo. The racing has gotten so competitive and guys have gotten so good at the bike that it's been a while since I've just ridden the whole thing solo off the front, which is what I love to do. My dad reminded me before the race like you're 15. Which back in the day when I was 15, that was my exact plan, is I push the swim as hard as I can to get a gap, and then I just hammer the bike heads down and just don't care about anybody else and just trust the fact that I'm coming off the bike first. So that was really awesome to go back and get back to my roots of racing a little bit. And I mean, Trevor and I outrode the field by pretty much four minutes at least, if not 5, 6, 7, 8 minutes for some of these guys. And I found somebody out on the course had a whiteboard. I don't know if they're listening, but if they are, thank you so much for just being that person who's putting the splits on the board. I don't know when that time check was taken or anything, but it at least let me know Trevor was 2.5 minutes behind me at that point, maybe a little more. And Jason was, and another guy there, like 4 and 6 minutes behind. And I was like, oh, this is great because I have 10, 15 miles left, or maybe it was 15, 20 at that point. And I knew, okay, it's going to take a lot for them to catch me. I don't have to push super hard. That's a reasonable gap. So maybe a little bit of a relaxing a little bit and trying to say most of the job's done, start to focus on the run a little bit. Now, I will say this, it went all pretty much without a hitch. There was, because I alluded to this beforehand, the closed courses. This is where just having people understand how fast the pros are going through would help, because I did run into some things that were unfortunate. And everybody kind of ran into this, talking with Jason, Trevor, like a lot of these guys, like there was a middle lane of cars on this main road, and then there were cars trying to get to that middle lane, crossing over bike traffic, which is fine when we're not there. But when you got like athletes flying down this hill at 40 plus miles an hour, and then toward the bottom of that hill, there's cars kind of sitting, waiting to get into it. The lead car couldn't get through, and then I had to weave my way through. And a little while later, I think of like 5 minutes down the road, after I had kind of been like, okay, that was good, I'm glad I shot that gap and I got through okay, there was, I think, a volunteer, a police officer, somebody had sent cars to our side of the road to stop at a stop sign. So you have basically an open course where we're ignoring all traffic rules because we're racing and are under the impression that we're all good. But then you have cars that are following the rules. And I think I did talk to Jason, and he said he had a car stop at a red light in front of him. So it was an issue that I kind of raised in the pre-race briefing, where when there is an open course and you're sharing the road and the shoulder isn't that significant, how are the cars being talked to get from point A to point B? And most of the time they said the cops would tell them to turn around, like go find another way if you can. But if you can't, be really careful and go through. And I understand we're stopping everybody's Sunday. People are trying to get to church. People are trying to get to see family. They're going about their day. We're disrupting it. I'm totally aware of that. But there's that safety aspect where it just needs to be tightened up a little bit. And this goes for all courses. I'm not trying to pick on this one race in particular. I've had this happen in one of my favorite races in Oceanside on the military base. I've had it happen all over the place. And thankfully, knock on wood and everything, it's all come out okay. But we have stories of people who have had cars pull out in front of them and they hit them, whether it's in practice or in a race as well. And those have been significant. So after the fact, I can laugh about it because I made it through okay. But I do think it's worth talking about, and at least where for every professional, we at least at this point in time have to be aware that these courses aren't closed completely, and they hardly ever are, except in certain circumstances. So you're never really putting your head fully down. You've got one eye open on the road at all times because you just have to. We were not on a football field with, security guards keeping the fans off the field, and even they have, people going and streaking on the field and that sort of thing. So that's kind of, I guess, just an interesting tidbit from the race. I'm not sure if anybody else had experienced this. And again, race director, bike course guy, the lead vehicle, I'd talked to pretty much most of those people, whether it was in the pre-race briefing or afterwards, all do a great job at the event. But again, I think this bike course safety stuff it's really hard to design a course to be a great race and also really safe at the same time. And I actually love this Louisville course. I thought the swim was really cool, despite the low water level, and the ride was super interesting and engaging. It wasn't just super flat. You had hills to kind of keep you engaged, and it still rolled really fast. The pavement was great through most sections, but yeah, it was just that sort of thing. And they didn't have issues the previous year, so I'm just kind of thinking maybe they didn't expect us to be there so soon with how fast we rode, which was right around 2 hours. So that's a little bit of a tangent. Again, I don't want to sound like I'm hating on the race. It's kind of this fence I'm trying to sit on, because I also just feel like we have to always speak up about safety. And I just think it's tricky because I don't want to sound like I'm hating or making excuses, but I really feel like with us as professionals and just anybody out on the course, the bike is the most dangerous aspect. And whether it's because of all of us on the road together riding bikes and we have to watch out for each other, or whether it's the vehicles coming onto the course. Those are kind of the two main things I always feel like are the most dangerous. So just kind of an aside to loved the bike, had a great experience, but also, there's always some things that are kind of going down on the course that you don't expect to, but that you have to kind of get through anyways. So coming off the bike, again, like I said, nutrition-wise, handled it all fairly well, but then at the end of the day, it was super hot. I was starting to feel some of the effort coming off the bike, but I still had some hope that I was like, okay, these are my cards. I played them. If I'm racing for the win, I didn't want to run toe-to-toe with these guys, so I took this risk, and I'm ready to accept any of the consequences that are coming. And coming off the bike, I didn't feel super bad. Now, I will say again, coming into T2, that run was absolutely brutal with the bike. And I talked to Jason afterwards. He experienced the same thing. My pedals, my shoes kept hitting the ground, and my bike would fly all over the place. And we ran from the road all the way down around transition, up and around. And that doesn't sound like long, but I swear it was 3/4 of a mile. The longest transition run I've ever had. And I'm just running. I'm going, this isn't a half marathon. This is a 14-mile run that we're doing. And we're already starting. And so I get there, I rack my bike, and where I'd stored the ice before, we had a cooler, which was allowed in there. And I was able to put some ice into my suit to go run with in the pantyhose again, and then put on all my stuff. I'd actually forgotten my race belt, so I makeshift kind of an old school bungee race belt, like with a spare bungee lace for your shoe. So another like little harebrained moment that wasn't a big deal, but had to kind of adjust and get through that pre-race. and tried to take a sip out of the frozen water bottle I had, but to keep it cold, I kept it in the cooler and it was still frozen solid. So just kind of tossed that to the side. I'm like, okay, let's just get out on this run and go. And started off, the legs felt good, I would say. I didn't feel awful starting the race and felt like I fell right into kind of, a conservative, hot pace of like 5:30. I'm looking down at my watch and it's saying 5:50. I'm like, are you kidding me? This can't be right. My watch has to be wrong. Like, I'm not running that slow, am I? And I kept going along and it wasn't changing. I'm like, okay, well, whatever. Like, it's a hot race. Guys are going to suffer. You already have a gap from the bike. Just try and run your race, because starting a half marathon, you could take some risks, but it was a really hilly run course and I knew to expect that. So I didn't want to overextend myself early on and figured if these guys catch me, whether it's, 5, 7, 9 miles in, run your race and then you try and go with them, because it's more easy to run with some guys who are running faster than you if you only have a few miles to go and it's more of a mental thing versus you're trying to go with them with 10 miles to go, or you're trying to push right from the beginning to get that gap and then you blow up or something. So I was going and maybe I thought, okay, maybe this is a calorie thing. In my mind, I thought I hadn't gotten through as much of the nutrition as I did. It was hard to tell in the BTA bottle. So I, again, had concentrated my stuff, my race nutrition, to be really thick for the run, to take it like a gel, kind of a gel-like consistency. And the first mile, I took that at the first aid station. Wasn't necessarily the most pleasant experience, but it went down and it felt good, had some caffeine in it. And I was fine then, and I kept running. I wasn't feeling amazing or super fast, but I kept going. I was like, okay, maybe that was just the experience. Like, I'm getting some calories back in me. I'm going to come back around after being off the bike. Then I see the mile 4 turnaround. So we had to go up this super steep hill and then bomb down it. And I could already tell Trevor was catching me at that point. He was maybe a minute and a half behind me, or a minute. And I was preparing myself to try and potentially run with him early on to see, okay, even if he gaps me later on in the run, maybe I can delay or hold off Jason, who looked like he was charging like a bat out of hell and always does on the run course. Just that guy does not matter if it is super hot, super cold, whatever it is, he's usually running the same exact pace. And mile 4, you come down after that, and I was preparing. I was like, okay, I'm going to take my other gel that I had concentrated and be able to keep going and take in those calories, because I was starting to feel like, I don't know if I'm bonking or if it's the heat or whatever it is. It didn't feel like it was super hot. It kind of felt more of like a sneaky heat. The sun wasn't fully out, so I think it had like that humidity that just is draining to you. So I go to take it, and it coats the inside of my mouth, and I'm like, oh God, this is too thick. And then I start taking water to try and dilute it to get it down. And then either a combination of my stomach going sour and not wanting to accept carbs and maybe taking it on too fast, and the fact that I feel like I'm choking on this gel at this point, it all comes to a head. And in the middle of the aid station, I just, hands on the knees, just emptying everything, throwing up all of the water, the calories that I have. You take that 2-second pause thinking that you're done, and then it all comes out again. And the aid station volunteers were absolute rock stars, because they're all like, oh man, are you okay? Like, can we get you some ice? And I'm just calling for like ice and Coke and water. Trevor runs by me at this point. I think he saw it happen, but he was real encouraged. He's like, come on, man, like, hang tough, like, let's go. And I'm just thinking to myself, I'm like, I feel a lot better now. Like, honestly, like, I feel light as a feather, and just have this ice in me. I take out some of the cups that had gotten shoved in there, pour some water over my face, have a bit of Coke, and start running. And I'm like, okay, I think that I could salvage this. In the back of my mind, I'm going, I think I'm at 0 calories right now, because my stomach maybe wasn't taking in everything. But now I've got to try and figure out, I've got 8 miles left, because I was at mile 5, got 8 miles left. How am I going to get enough calories to finish this race strong, and either try and stay with Trevor, which I was like, man, I just threw up. Like, how am I going to do that? I don't usually throw up in races unless they are pretty brutally hot. Like, Singapore has been pretty much the only place where I've really thrown up before, and that's usually at the finish line or it's at, it was on the bike one year, and I pulled out after that because I'm like, I'm not going to force myself into heat exhaustion. But, for better or for worse, I was out at the far end of the course. What are you going to do? Walk back home? Like, I got to salvage this. I didn't come here to not podium. I came here to win. And if I couldn't do that and I risked it all, I got to get on the podium. Just get some momentum in this season. So I booted and rallied, pulled the old college trick. You throw up in the alleyway and you get back out there and you do it. So I kept running, and for about a mile, it worked. And I felt like, not a rock star, but I felt like I'm managing it okay. And I was like, I heard I had 6 minutes on Jason coming in. I'm like, I know he took maybe 2 minutes out of me in the first 4 miles, but that would mean he's not going to catch me until about mile 10-ish. And then I'm like, okay, well, maybe I can slingshot my way up. I don't know. Maybe something can happen. But then a few miles into that, I'm dragging myself up these hills. My body starts going like, you have no calories here. You're pretty dehydrated at this point. I'm dragging my way through this half marathon. And I get to mile 9, dragging myself up and over the hill. I'm getting on the downhill and Jason comes flying past me. And credit to both of those guys. Like, he gave me some encouragement too. He said, insane bike. And I'm just like, dude, incredible run. Like, good job. Like, go after it. And just in my own little cave of suffering, and just keep going. And at this point, I'm kind of looking behind me going, is somebody running with him? Like, who came off the bike near him? Who's capable of running? I know there's a couple other fast guys in this race who can run really well, probably in this super hot and hilly course. So I'm trying to just be like, just keep moving. You're in third. Let's finish this job off. And I get to mile 10 and I'm getting information, and I'm getting told basically by Eric, who's out there, he's telling me, you got to sack up and go. If you don't, you're not going to get on the podium. He's like, that is going to suck. So all of that's communicated pretty quick. I had heard the guy behind me was about 2 minutes behind. I get another one. This was only like half a mile later. I'm getting told he's a minute behind me, and I got 3 miles to go. I'm like, okay, that's 20 seconds a mile. I just got to run reasonably to get to the finish line. So I just ugly run the next mile, get to mile 2. People are telling me there's nobody, like 2 miles to go at mile 10 or 11. That's my math. The people are telling me there's nobody behind you. You're good. And then like 200 meters later, I hear somebody go, he's about 400 meters behind you. I'm like, who are these people who are not seeing this guy? And I turn a corner and I'm like, can clearly see somebody about 30 seconds back. Got about a mile and a half to go, maybe a little more. I'm like, all right, you got to make it to mile 12. You got to go hard, because 30 seconds a mile over the last mile of a half marathon is really tough. So just believe and just gut it out. Just, you like to be gritty, just be gritty. It doesn't matter how you look. It doesn't matter how you sound. It doesn't matter how you feel. Just get to that finish line. So I'm just like guerrilla running this in, trying to get myself to this finish line. And that kind of starts to build. I'm able to push up one of the last hills. And I think that's where the guy behind me, when I talked to him, is it Matt McWilliams? He was saying he was cramping on that hill, I think. But I was like, man, I know this guy's running really well to be able to catch, because I came 2 minutes ahead of Trevor, who was right behind me. So he's at least 3 or 4 minutes plus behind me. So I was just running scared a little bit. But once I was about a half mile, I could kind of tell. I was like, okay, I got this. Got to the finish line, collapsed down, and was just like cooked. And that was just basically it. I was happy to get the podium. I'm really proud of the way that I raced. I think it's a little bit of it was a terrible half marathon. I mean, I ran like 1:21, probably one of my slowest half marathons ever. But it was really good to get on the podium again, show off for my sponsors, and put together a really clean swim bike. It had its challenges, and I think the biggest things is just making sure that my nutrition and my run off the bike are clicking. The nutrition is something that I think maybe I'm getting a little stuck in the Ironman. You have to fuel 125 grams or more per hour to have the energy. A half Ironman is just not as big of a deal. Like I did a big carbo load. I have a good pre-race breakfast, and then trying to jam in all this stuff in the heat. I just had such a wrong thinking for trying to concentrate my carbs and then water them down as I go, because you just have that like rock sitting in your stomach. So yeah, I mean, I would say the main point to this is I always go back and I look at these races, and I'm kind of doing a race breakdown for how I would go through it with myself, with my coach, how I'm grading myself, like what went right. I always start with that. And the swim and the bike, how I committed, I attacked the race, and I didn't fear the heat. Those were huge wins, I think, overall. And the fact that, my power dropped for the second half of the ride, kind of by design, kind of just by some fatigue. That also, was great with how fast I'm riding. Like the last race that I can remember, and somebody else can maybe correct me if they know my results better, because I didn't do a deep dive on this, but the last one I remember was probably 2019 Oceanside, where just by happenstance, I think when I won that race, I was solo off the front. Rudy, I think, caught me by the end of that bike, and Sam Appleton like crashed out of that race on one of the corners and couldn't continue to ride with me. So I have always kind of been riding with people and then running off the bike with others. So I was completely solo. So I was happy to kind of do that all on my own and show my bike is pretty darn good right now. And there's still quite a bit that I can improve on it, like just with workout wise, accumulating fitness and some execution stuff, maybe some fit stuff, but we're in a really good spot on the swim and the bike, especially with the swim. Cause I was going to rely like on Greg Harper a little bit, who's a very good swimmer, just hang on his feet and let him break up the swim. But this time I needed to do it and set myself up for success all the way till the end of the bike. The nutrition handicapped me. The heat is something that's still, I'm working on, but I think I'm getting closer and closer. And this one actually showed like, I managed it really well. And a lot of it was from nutrition. And then just the run off the bike, there's just some training going from Ironman to 70.3. That's where I think some of the biggest improvements are going to go, and just getting this consistent training. I think we'll see some big improvements in Santa Cruz, and then some more once I hit Augusta. So I guess I always like to talk about the mental side. It's just fascinating to me. And I was maybe going to go like failure versus success, or talk about like, how do I define success? I've kind of talked on that almost a little bit. I always think it's good to go back to it, but really this whole race was about risk versus reward. And these races are about trying to win and set yourself up for the win. So for me, that happened through committing through that swim and bike, and then seeing what was going to happen and where I was at on the run. So that's a huge win. So I feel like this whole race, I'm on the podium. I executed my race almost as well as I can. Everything that went wrong is pretty much within my control. Like, it's my decisions to concentrate my carbs, my decision to push the race how I was going to go. It's my interpretation of the race. It's my racecraft. So those guys outclassed me on the run. And that's how racing is. You race to test yourself. And I guess the main success, and what I like to get back to, is there really is no failure if you're learning. And whether you win or you lose, you start over the next day. Like, I'm starting over again here. I'm continuing on, and it doesn't change what I'm going to do for the next race. In fact, a lot of times I feel like I'm more fired up over something like this, where I came close but didn't do it, because I know I'm there and I got to keep working hard, versus sometimes getting first makes you complacent. You sit back, you're like, oh, I'm good. This is great. I don't need to do anything. It can also fire you up, but there's, a flip side to everything. So I really want that result. I feel like I'm really close to breaking that tape again, but you have to get things so right. And I really give kudos to those guys for, Trevor said he was pushing the bike really hard to try and catch, and he still ran a respectable half marathon that was hot and hilly. And Jason had an incredible run. So overall, for me, I feel like I'm getting better and better throughout the year. It's a bit of a frustrating process when the progress comes slow, or it feels like you might take 2 steps forward, 1 step back, or sometimes it's 1 step forward, 2 steps back. But overall, I feel like I'm fitting all of these puzzle pieces together, and I'm building that momentum. And that momentum is what confidence comes from. You don't just say, I'm going to be confident. You take from your training, from your racing and things you learn, and you put yourself again and again in the arena and keep showing up and keep believing almost delusionally that you are the best in the world, that you're going to win these races. So that's why we do it. And, you break yourself down. Like I posted a video of me at the finish line that got a little bit of traction, and it's raw. Like sometimes like it sucked in the middle of the half marathon. It was not fun at that point. It's not always fun all there, but I had a hell of a great time in the swim and the bike. So all of that was just really positive for me. I feel like now I'm recovering a little bit. We're going to keep building. I'm feeling good. I'm excited for Santa Cruz. I think that's a great course again for me. I think the field is going to be a lot of fun to race, and I'm excited to kind of break this one down for who's going, where it's going. It's just the whole process behind it is really, really great. And I guess, I was going to tell, I guess, some story. I got a couple of them, but it was funny to see. It's almost like I forgot racing. I hadn't really spent that much time not racing, but to go back and to kind of put yourself back into it, into like a racing training block where I'm going to be doing it a lot more. I almost had to remind myself, like I said, I forgot my race belt. At the start, I'm, with Jackie and Jason, we're like, oh, let's jog over to the start. It's about a mile and change away because there's a point-to-point swim. And we're starting to jog, we're chatting it up. And I'm like, oh God, I forgot my chip. I got to go back to transition. And I turn around and jog back, and I get to transition and it's not there. It's not on my bag. I always put it on my bag so that I don't forget it at the Airbnb or wherever I'm staying, the hotel. I always attach it onto my race day bag, and sometimes I forget to put it on my ankle. But then I look down at my ankle and it's there. And I see Jason over at the store. He's like, it was on your ankle the whole time, wasn't it? I'm like, yes, it was, because I'm like all over the place sometimes. Like it's that calm mind of getting everything set and then also feeling like you're all over the place at once. So it's trying to settle back into some of that race routine as well. And I feel like this almost like getting the first podium of the season kind of takes that monkey off your back a little bit too. And frankly, I feel like I've done a really good job at handling a lot of that, but getting a podium is always nice. It's always a success. I had an older pro once, Spencer Smith, I want to say, because it was after junior national. I think I was second or third, and I was kind of like, oh man, I just wanted to win. It just didn't feel great that day. I didn't have the run I wanted. He's like, he's like British, something like that. He's like, oh mate, like any day you're on a podium is a good day. And that's so true, especially nowadays. So anyways, I've definitely rambled on longer than my normal race recaps. I hope I gave a little bit more insight into some of how I break down a race overall. I really try and look at all that went well. I look at the dynamics a lot too, like how I broke down what was going on, but I tried to stay a little bit away from just like a play-by-play and some of the reasoning of why I did stuff and whether it went right or wrong. So I guess to sum it up, it went about as well as it could have unless I won the race and I just had a good run. But racing is all about taking these calculated risks, and I knew exactly what I was doing. So sometimes you win, sometimes you get third. And the moral of this story is third is better than fourth. But props to anybody else who raced there with a fourth, fifth, sixth. A lot of guys had breakthrough races I saw who were not on the podium, but hey, we all battled out there. Everybody is focused on self-improvement and chasing those wins and just being better. So that's what we love about it. Excited to get out there again. Thanks again for everybody who's listening. Any of the reviews, I think I've seen like one review up there, gave me 5 stars. Shout out to whoever did that, because that's awesome that people are listening and enjoying me just rambling on for 30 to 60 minutes. And we're approaching about the 60-minute mark now. So if there's anything too that you find you want to hear me expand more on, talk about, you have questions, I'm happy to throw it in and talk. I'm trying to, give a lot of my thoughts and opinions on kind of what's going on in and around all of the racing and that sort of thing, just training and life as a professional triathlete, I guess. And I really do enjoy a lot of the mental stuff. There's a lot of cool stuff there because we all know, swimming, biking, running, power numbers, a lot of that stuff. And it's interesting, but then the mindset behind it, I think just takes it to that next level. So thanks again for listening, everyone. And we'll keep this thing rolling. So until next time, keep training hard and appreciate all the listens.